조작하는 요거더니 주로 상황을 다시 되래 저게 되래 이거 제일 뭐 그감돼요.
And to all the Dharma friends joining us on the live stream, good morning, long life, and I hope you're all well.
뭐도 제제들 많은 얘기만 먹어서 나는데 저들이 이거 삼탈로 나가도 찾아왜 저기 여행에서는 제주도는 너 조져봐. 이들 출라 삼탈로 어쩌는 거는 라바다라. 현근나 말이지 견두랑 장사로 도리에들 나라도 아주 파보도 버져 농가까지 라만나서 한데 오미 시지 이거는 저도 사실 그냥 오해라 생각하고 그러는데 저위로 메셔서 한데 좀더 가지나 이제 야 소매 보니까 일어서 생기서도 이제 다니나 아마 조지는 자자도 근데 다 주로는 받으니 가장 무서 최탐지 거성 거라지 기록실에 거성 거라지 이제 다서 코안이 마도가 선별한 랑을용아 있음 차들이 되더니 간자 찍을용아 있음라더니 이 용아 있음 산지에 거성 사웅 정말 창거요리면 매도 사야만 보여 매도 찍을 매도 사웅을 매도 이제 정말 창거요리 그 찬이 희화되고 그 세우들 내로 때려들이 청하고 이렇게 마음이 매도 사운데 미고나 되 매도 사운데 사이는 거 조심하고 좀 들이 매도 그 매도 강원에 이 마음이 매도 사운데 돌아도 요리 그래서 다 머릿속에 이제 벌써 이제로 되게 머릿속에 이제 매도 사운데 라게 다 모나면 되는 미호 요리 모나치바 모나한테 손남 사람 모나자고 선남까지 다 삼티를 남긴지들이 쳐다 잡아를 남긴 대인들이 선남을 대인들이 매도 사오는데 그 매도 잡아먹는 사오는 일들이 그분이 진짜 사오는 차서고요. 그랬더니 사지에 고방 터도 매도 사오 민소가 들어서 사지에 고방 터도 마음이 매도 사오는 호화 차서 문제 매도 사오는 쪽으로 대사를 하고 그랬어.
So, Dharma friends, as we said yesterday, all phenomena have the nature of the three kayas, according to the Dharma. For sentient beings who have not realized the nature of their mind, they have an ordinary body, speech, and mind. And within the body, speech, and mind of one person, the seeds of the three kayas are perfectly complete. And so you might have 1 million different flowers, and they all may have originated from one seed. And so all of these qualities of the flower is contained within the seed. So one who understands that is one who understands the nature of the mind. But for us, often it is in an immature state, in the seed-like state. If we want to mature that seed, then we must plant the seed into the ground, and it must encounter heat and moisture. And then finally, the flower can grow. But then most seeds don't grow and go to waste. So we make this prayer where we say, grant your blessings that this human existence may become meaningful. So we ripen that seed through the power of aspiration, the aspiration prayer. It is a method to accumulate merit. And merit is love. And the nature of love is like the water or the rain that makes the seed grow into a flower. So through merit, we cause the seed to grow into a flower, and then from that of seed many countless flowers may grow, and then they again produce more seeds, and so forth. So when we fully mature our mind, we attain the state of enlightenment. For as long as we are in an immature state, we are sentient beings.
Jadi kadang remember sebala tada chamdang kadang chokor la soba ta yoga la so mambo yore nga member sebala nga longkol nga de lude mingo na nga longkol de mingo gore nga lokol min semchukol mingo yore pene mene de sa주 거성 거 상계들 상계를 거성 요래지 오 데 추가 남갔다 왔지 거기 찾대 봐 셈 다진이 집에 남갔다 찾은 거요 롱그 자총다 돼 지금이 직진 코데지가 아니고 샤이용 거요 롱그 자총다 돼 그거 잡아다 돼 내가 드는 유모가 나는 게 샤리 미 마미니 반이 되다가 까tuk거는 좋아하고 마다는 나서는 좋아하고 나는 거요 내가 소식 동네야 요래 제 민심을 때리지 타고 사지게 이쪽이 생각하면 이정도 되는 별로 생각 이제 셈 축을 매는더니 르가 이가들이 셈 축을 르가 이가들이 아주 매는 거요 대를 때리다 가서 파파냐면 이제 뭐 담게게 저도 진짜는 쓴 거요 늘 이제 요래 사지 좀 되게 가디에는 사지 늘 되는 거 니요래 늘 되는 거네 봉부 늘 남이 라서 그 봉부 늘 다살을 깨를 나서 와 나만도 스타트업 제사 쪽생 좀네 클래스를 스타트업 때 사람가 때라서 공부는 그래서 살리도 박차네 마다블 네 우보도 제마디를 봐 다는 자송다를 했을 그래서 답답을 줄이지 르미는 자송다를 라요가 때문에 뭐 다나 때리들 자동이 딘지 자동 이제 또 말해 자동 디디 또 봐야 자라 티네도 셈 차당도 쇼치고 연거요 그래 지가 니보도 제나 오다 니보도 니모게디 하이도 대사면 되고는 문제가 라올을 들이지 들어서 포소로 좋아자 더블링이 됐다가 강이 탐세더니 루단지 정신 말을 들이지 다다 좋아 하고 말이 시계다 담다 제들이 좋아자 됐다 이거지 셈이 이제 뉴먼 같이 나도 내용이 되게 나는 이제 지금 되게 들이다 다 뉴먼 같은 거예요 마음이 봐 차고요 예를 들이다 마음이 벌써 봐라 다다다니 저렇게 소리 나타는 니봐 너봐 삼지 남양때 나동들 때는 자지 뭐들이 가면 삼때당 돈이 배나 삼때들 때다다 비둘 삼때랑이나 가진이 총을 인피로 되고 근데 뒤강이 지랑이 되들 그게가시면 배나 다들 양탐세는 돈을 양지 장이게 또 다니 보되게 나시네 그리다다디 르양제 동다 전보리 정말 남양은 진짜다 르양제 마음이 벌써 봐 갑라 남양 양이보를 뛰니 뛰느니 그 셈대로 차오니 또 다니 보들라 예차 되게 나시니 뛰는 나동지 가래리 다 대박이 소용 거래 대박이는 또 삼제 되고는 잠벌 그랬더니 딸 르양 가래나 되니 삼제가 나타니 펜티 토바타를 뒤쳐대요 뭐예요 이 처이와 따라들이 살려면 담시되나 꽤 마시나 동다들 르명제 나서는 머리 맞추는 거래 실록 다들 라마는더니 라그 대바 라마는 다음 대바 이시제 대바 니 땡보요라 이 라마는 소와들 먹으지는 양 먹치는 거요 양 뭐지 능이 소화강이 지고시는 양 먹치는 거래 먹치는 탄수음이 거래 뒤에 셈나 세 자라티네 자동 디디지도 받는데 남sem나 초와도 다들 살살 이렇게 요걸 근데 뒤 무구나 다들 인지요 마도 같은 게는 이게요 늘 같이 숨지 누구에게 나오나더니 랑에서다 랑에 남의 때와지 하자 때와지 못해 희소나 딴양 먹지는 거예요. 그래 세부 초월 먹지는 이제 세부 싸워는더니 단디 랑에더니 대 삼대를 잡아치는 거예요. 자당을 잘 이 양당인데 대신에 나와도 넓송 때려들이 먹지는 거예요. 이랬다 좋아하는 것들이 나는 남미시선을 가리래. 때렸는데 동에 좀 용어요래. 다도 좀 열서는 용어요래. 나는 야 상속생제들 뭐지 이나 상속생 잡을래가 다다 나사게 되는데라고 저 때렸다고 땅서는 나머지 셔로 락벌들이 저 각각 요 말에 옛날에 시었어야 돼. 도담하고 something. 샘 코로나 식을 리드 식을 말이 샘 코로나 얘는 체지요 말이 강에 법에는 좀 첩다 좀 접이 제왕이들 그래 첩다 접이 제왕 기시에 봐도 샘 코로나 문에서는 체점을 하고 샘은 내려고 하지 하소는 샘 체지요 말이 오 다들 날리시 받다면 샘 리치를 말이 샘이 식을 말이 돌됐다고 거기지 그랬다 도만 첩다 좀 말아 루지 루지 탈라는 도로 새로운 체제에 하고 좀 이태왕 있어.
And so when we are in an unripe state, we experience various different kinds of suffering. And the secret mantra teachings, the Vajrayana teachings, are a method, one of the methods to free us from that suffering. It is said that the secret mantra teachings are rich. There are many secret mantra teachings, but they do not require much difficulty, but they are meant for those with the sharpest mental capacities. And that is what makes the Vajrayana teachings unique. Previously we received this question about the secret, also in the secret mantra. So it is secret in the sense that it is naturally hidden. For example, when you look at the seed of a flower, you don't really see the qualities of the flower in the seed. So when you look at it from an external perspective, you see really nothing there. So the qualities are hidden in the seed. So that is the secret of the secret mantra. And one who understands the secret mantra will see will understand all manifestation of the dharmic manifestation of body, speech, and mind as a method to mature. For example, now the last couple of days we had we practiced yogic exercises and dancing and also song and so forth. And all of these mature the body, speech, and mind. So the yogic exercises, for example, mature the body, and then the singing of songs purifies the speech or makes the speech mature into the Sambhogakaya. And then the mind matures into the Dharmakaya. And when we have matured into the three kayas, we become enlightened. The Dharmakaya is the nature of mind which is like space, and it pervades samsara and nirvana. It is free of all thought, dualistic thought of self and other. The Sambhogakaya is like a rainbow in the sky, and that is within samsara and nirvana. From this basis, everything naturally arises, just like a rainbow in the sky. And then Nirmanakaya is like the rain falling from the clouds. And the Nirmanakayas actually appear in this world to help mature those who are still immature. And there are different kinds of Nirmanakayas. We have mentioned that the 6 realms of samsara are Nirmanakayas, appearing temporarily in an impure way, and they experience suffering. And then there is also the pure Nirmanakayas, the pure Nirmanakaya Pure Land, then the Sambhogakaya Pure Land, and so on. So when the mind matures into the Dharmakaya, then the body and the speech will naturally mature. Some of you are familiar with the lineage supplication of the Vajrayana practice, and in the lineage supplication it mentions the way in which we overcome the 4 maras. And the Buddha also always mentions the 4 maras, and there is many images where a deity suppresses the 4 maras. So there is the mara of the aggregates, for instance. It says that the mara of the aggregates is liberated when the body matures into the form of the deity. That's what it says in the lineage supplication. So for example, when we practice deity yoga, we visualize the deity clearly on the basis of bodhicitta, and we recite the mantra and habituate to this practice. We are gradually purifying the impure habitual tendencies of body, speech, and mind. And so through the visualization of the deity, we purify the habitual tendencies of the body. And our ordinary fixation to the concreteness of the body will become purified. And the body appears like a lucid rainbow in the sky. And the rainbow-like pure form of the deity, that is like a rainbow, that has full autonomy, has full freedom. And then through the mantra recitation, we purify the habitual tendencies of our speech. And that is the concepts of grasping at, or the concept of this grasping concept of inflating what we perceive and how we interpret what we perceive. So basically the karmic imprints of the speech are being purified through the mantra recitation. And the sounds are really very powerful. When we hear a sound in an ordinary sense, the mind can develop very strong feelings of attachment and anger. For example, if somebody says something nice to you, immediately you're very happy about that. You think, oh, that was so nice, and you laugh. But then the moment somebody insults you, you get really angry, and you start fighting with the other person. And this is really where all the difficulties in this world come from. So they originate from the grasping at the body, and then that leads to us fighting through our speech and then saying all kinds of things to other people, and that escalates all kinds of conflicts in the world. So it arises from the basis of dualistic thinking in the mind, self and other, and then all the afflictive emotions arising from it. So the afflictive emotions arise in our mind, and that is a sign that the mind, and we can't control them. It is a sign that the mind is in an immature state. So to purify our speech from such negative habitual tendencies, according to the Dharma, there are many different methods. For example, the mantra recitation or the chanting of mantra in melody, as we have heard yesterday, that is extremely precious. Because this chanting of mantra in melody is also an exchange of loving kindness and compassion. And that eliminates our self-grasping, the dualistic thinking in our mind, the self and other. So it is an exchange of altruism. And so that is because when we hear the pleasant sound of a mantra chanted in melody, then our mind follows this. We become enchanted by this sound. And that is extremely meaningful, because once we become enchanted by the pleasant sound of the mantra, the mind calms down and relaxes. And so in this way, we are maturing our speech by purifying the fixations of the fixating, tense mind, as the mind now relaxes when we are enchanted by the pleasant sound of the mantra. And then it is not just the sound, but it's also the inner meaning contained. The meaning contained in the chant is ultimately the meaning of love and the twofold truth. And So that goes for the various kinds of chants that may exist in the world. If they contain such a meaning, it becomes a kind of a vehicle to exchange loving kindness and compassion, a method for us to become harmonious. And sometimes also people are so enchanted by the sound of a beautiful melody that it even makes them cry. And that also happens, for example, when you feel great devotion to a guru, when your trusting faith and your inspirational or clear faith are very stable, and then you supplicate to that guru, then you might cry out of devotion. And then sometimes we also cry because we suffer as an experience of pain. So there's these three ways in which we may cry. So the first one was, depending on the outer sound that we hear, we become enchanted by that sound, and it generates a very strong feeling that makes us cry. And then the second one again was we cry out of devotion. And if there is devotion, then there will also be compassion for those sentient beings who have not realized the nature of their mind. And then when you see their suffering, again, you might cry. For example, when you think about a family member who you love very much and they die, you cry. But so that is because the reason why we cry is because it is out of love. And love is like the rain that then flows out of our eyes. And so one of those questions we have here was, how can I transform my thoughts of sadness about my husband and daughter dying into altruistic thoughts to benefit others? So that is related to this. So we suffer very much when a loved family member has died. But that also is because we hold them to be our own. So we think that they belong to me. So if someone really possesses bodhicitta and they think about all the suffering that is happening in the world, for example, the disease and so forth right now, then they will suffer in the same way. It makes them feel the same way. And it would not make them feel any different than when a family member dies. It's like everyone is their family member. There's no separate feeling. And that is because they have understood the ultimate truth. But then also when someone dies, if you understand the ultimate truth, you know that it is just their body that dies, but their mind cannot actually die. Then again, in the lineage supplication of the Vajrayana, it says then regarding the Mara of the Lord of Death, it says, when may I realize the immortality of mind and thereby overcome the Mara of the Lord of Death. When you realize the nature of the mind, then you overcome the Mara of the Lord of Death. So those who are familiar with meditation practice and who know their mind, they will understand the Vajra form. The Vajra form is the indestructible form. That is your true nature. Even though the physical form may disintegrate, your mind can never die. And if you realize that, you overcome the Mara of the Lord of Death.
자신이 탐스러운 소리들이 자신이 사실이들이 자신 참조 그 관계들이 자신이 되거든 다 로고 바찬남도 같이 파 용례들이 첫 당만하게 sempre 때도 땅만 주세요. 갑들이 달 항상 다상하가 달고 랑 끼니들이 달 제티 도마를 다버지리 그이 참나 들이지 다다 나오냐만지 도로이 마들 봐 쩔쳐고요. 들이 타만 봐라 뒤장하면 들이 라라라는 소리면 나오냐봐 자기 참치는 나도 체 양자 땅아니 세상에서 네 값도 가지리 말람 그 롱거도 말람 장말 말람 아니 곡송이 저 세마타도 말람 저이 세마타도 아니 세상 중이요 아니 세상 아니 좀 받대 Koba Toma Meva Pachata Nines of my way. Not did you say me, my thing asked if Pachata took the Egypt woman. The Nanglesi woman, many you want me, that me, but that is not this and the thing you were the lucky yati, the Damati is the Lasantini, the Lonima Mayok, Lasantosapati, the Rosapati, the light did Mount Pachatam, just like Tapata Rinitine, Pachatam, the region, Meva. Chawi Ramjini, Trosa Mevachari. Then Lions Batin, Hol Pachadi Yangjar, Toka de Akum, Territory, Pardo, the main Yonji, Party Napsi, the main Yonji, the Nipani, that sent the Tama Chadi coming, now on a Maditan Yongosilla, Takanda, Santok Semshin, oh, that's just what there are. Something, Kari, oh, that's a Tambo. 답도 놓고 조금 답도 성리 산재 용지 시티니 주지 삼시지요 삼시지요나 삼시지요 다이티 많이 좀 받다 단지네 단지네 티 많이 좀 받니 니부터 차롱데 산속세비 쳤다오나 그래 오 산속세비게 산속세비지도 뭐 람스 쇼도 주요나 그래 쇼도 다 삼대가 다고 타요 빈속고 요래 삼대를 줘요 대사버들 포하잖아 삼대고 어디 들이 다다다 제름나 토마니 말랑만이 미세마스 람소만 배면 홍 인증은 지시 그 요래 니래세나 제 사이남 주면은 오만 배면 홍지 그래서 조남데 다자 강지 다자지 다디니 셈 냠는 거 다든지 다드 땅세 제 납도 직접에 셈래고 그래 납도 직접에 셈래고 깝들이들 항상다 여기 홍문된지네 다시 동문 조구리 여기 홍문 조구는 들지라 많이 좀 박사 조구요 말이 상하를 병아티 다들 직진에서 왔다 가리나 롱아서 탐체디 답을 조고 다다다 샘들 조고지 여기 홍문 조구는 홍들이 비슷비 사지 탐체다 라고 샘지 때 타면 어쩌고 여기 홍자치 보는데 홍지 좀 저거래지 사지 탐체가 도서 때들이 홍물이 홍제 자료 봐서 그때라니 따와기는데 참았던 거리 강리들이 어디서 와서 가는 놈을 남지 똥발 떠니걸 안 하다 홍제네 때라고 차디요래 대회는 들이다니 셔서는 담지 거기서 시험을 받으더니 연구원이 유모 나디 박찬 연구를 이 머리 피를 오게했다면들이 쇼가를 들이더라 홍대는 편지 상태를 제가 요게 뒤뒤 섭들랑다 셔서고 차롱도 셔서고 요래 데리티들이 제담을 줄이지 아다 다디디 뭐 나는 탐색관에 선받고 자 뭐지 용 대기법관에 뒤뒤 참조법관에 람서들이 딱지레 야 포는 지내서 뭐 제대로 받지나 뒤뒤 동조관에 뒤뒤라 상하가 탑되지 상하 탑이 아데 대답을 지는 뒤뒤 다 롱거를 줘 롱거를 용 띵가래들 롱거를 나기 니지 매버서 따와지 내가 살 나와 할 샤르나 라가 나와 샤르나 대답을 라가 나와 라가 롱주베 배는 거기서 다 그야시 거기서 파들 공리 나리 이제 시거리 생부들이 나니 생지 관하고 그래 네 강관은 미강은 생부 이제도 직발이 대답을 하고 간사들이 또 하고는 될때 롱거도 죽었니 송전이 죽고 그랬더니 샘대시 뭐 참아 제식 봐요. 거기에 여기를 하고네. 오, 내가 롱거다. 니 봐라더니 다 이래지 집이 왔더니 털어. 그래서 답을 이제 로요래. 그 박사 용어요 말이. 이따다디 자들들이 다다이 감지에른다. 감지에른다. 라하니 되와네. 딱딱한 게 요래. 그 가당 세고가네. 갖다 되게 이제 남들 깝더니 숨때 치고 뛰는 생각만 욕듣고 요래. 하자 뒤집어 요래.
So we have listened to the beautiful chant of the mantra. And so then when there is a moment, there was also a moment when the mantra comes to an end, when it stops. And so in this, this is also a significant moment, because in this moment, all of our ordinary karmic imprints, the habitual tendencies in our minds, our ordinary thinking is completely gone, has disappeared, and the mind abides single-pointedly like crystal clear water. And so in this moment, when all sound ceases and the mind is very clear, then we can bring in the skillful means of the secret mantra and visualize Chenrezig or Tara in an instant. We visualize the pure, illusory form of the deity. And this is a significant training because it relates to the bardo state after death. When we die, then we leave behind this body just like an old pair of clothing. And then instantly, it is very important to take on the new clothing, put on the new clothing of the deity. So the moment you let go of one, you take on the other, which is not ordinary, but the form of the deity. Of course, if one is an ordinary person, and then one, for example, one falls asleep, and one doesn't remember the deity or anything like that, then there is just this sense of me when you wake up. So first you fall asleep, all thinking stops, and then you wake up, and then again, instantly, this thought of me arises. I have slept. I've woken up. So the sleep state, because we also dream, is related to the Sambhogakaya actually. So when you wake up from your sleep, and instantly there's this thought of I've woken up, and immediately this habitual tendency of thinking me arises, and that is because we have habituated to it since beginningless time in samsara. So it always naturally arises continuously. For example, when we wake up from sleeping. And that is significant because it is very similar when we wake up from death. After we have died, we wake up in the bardo. So actually, even though this I constantly arises, it doesn't really exist. We are actually falsely believing in the existence of a self. And so that is, this instruction of remembering the deity is an essential instruction which serves as an antidote to that. So the moment you discard your old clothing and you put on the new clothing after now this transition after death, instead of thinking me, you habituate to thinking of the deity on the basis of bodhicitta. Because otherwise, if you don't think about the deity, then instantly the sense of me again arises and you will continue to wander in samsara. The ordinary samsaric imprints will again arise from within your mind. And then again, the consciousness in the bardo will experience much suffering. In the bardo, before we die, if we have purified our mind and we have trained in the deity yoga, we may think of the deity the moment we have died. Or for example, if someone who you love has died, and you are one that possesses bodhicitta, then you will think of the deceased person with a mind of love. If you think of them with love, then you will first take refuge for them in the three jewels, recollect the qualities of the Buddha and the Dharma, which is love and compassion. And when you think of them with love, then there is no self-grasping in your mind. Whereas the mind of the deceased might be like an ice block. So if your mind is a mind of love, which is like hot water, and you think of this person, you connect to their mind, so it is like hot water connecting to an ice block. It will naturally make the ice block melt. And so this is how we establish a connection to the deceased. And then once we have established a connection, as you mentioned yesterday, if we practice poa for them, for instance, they can be guided to a pure land and become liberated. So we train in the moment of death now by practicing the deity, by visualizing the deity. Every time you wake up from sleeping, you can make it a habit of reciting Om Mani Padme Hum. every time you wake up. Then you form this habit that upon awakening, you don't think about yourself, but you think about the deity. And so that is also related to the completion stage, or dissolution, or the time when all melody stops, when there's a pause. And that is when it all dissolves, and you come to the natural state of the mind, where there is not a single thought. And then in this moment, you can either think of the deity, or you can also simply think about the hung syllable in an instant. If you think about the hung, then the ordinary thought of me will not arise within the mind. That is a skillful instruction of the Vajrayana. And so then naturally in the bardo, when the body is discarded, the consciousness will enter into the hung. And the hung represents the essential nature of your own mind. And that mind is the same as the mind of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. So the hung is said to be a very precious syllable because it represents the heart essence of all the Buddha's minds. So then regarding the view, also the qualities of the view, the so-called view, which is the realization of mind, within the mind itself, the natural state of the mind, actually the hung is naturally included within it. So the hung is the natural state of your mind. So what it means is that according to the Madhyamaka, for instance, the middle way school, it says that there is nothing, the nature of the mind is that there is nothing that inherently exists. It is empty of self-nature. And the self-resounding sound of the hung represents this empty natural state of the mind. So when somebody has died and they experience the suffering in the bardo, the one who benefits them, one who helps them, knows that it is just their body that has died, but their mind cannot die. And they will continue to experience suffering due to their afflictive emotions. So if you think of them with altruism, and then next think about, bring to mind the hung syllable, you establish a connection to them which melts the ice block within their mind and causes their illusory form to mature, to become liberated. And so again, similar, if we, for example, listen to them chant of a beautiful mantra, first we experience this feeling of bliss or joy as we are enchanted by the mantra. And then when it comes to an end, to a stop, in an instant, think of either Chenrezig or of Tara. So that is a skillful means of the secret mantra of entering into the nature of the Sambhogakaya. And so what is the quality of the Sambhogakaya? It is that the Sambhogakaya has no dualistic thought of self and other. So even though external manifestations appear to them, they recognize these as their own self-projections. So when they interact with them, it is like they are interacting with themselves. For example, when 2 people are speaking with each other, normally we think it's me and him who are talking. But those who have understood there is no duality between self and other, they know that we all have the same mind, even though we have different bodies. For example, this room is filled with many people. Even though there's many people in here, we all share a single mind, a single basis of mind. So one who understands the view understands this. And this is to understand the union of the Dharmakaya and the Sambhogakaya. So the Dharmakaya is to know, knowing the Dharmakaya is to know that we all possess the same Buddha nature. And that is the very basis of all appearances of samsara and nirvana. And then the various appearances that do arise from this basis are the Nirmanakaya forms. So from this single basis, when you rest in the single basis, what arises from this single basis should be Chenrezig or Tara, the pure illusory body. then if you're able to remember that in a bardo, then you will not continue to wander in samsara. No samsaric karmic imprints will arise. So this is the purpose of practicing the Yidam deity, visualizing the deity, and reciting a deity's mantra. And so this is exactly what we have been introduced to last night too. And that was really excellent. So first we experience great bliss, and then when the sound comes to an end, then the mind is single-pointed, and then it can enter into the nature of the deity. So that is a very important point.
大上就把这要不想这每个做个地方里嘛去，那我在你手里嘛，我让当这边这个吃这个钱在人家手里嘛，你全部上出身的，大点的，他妈的加速度，可能我超出了加速度我认识，要不他我上去他我干的，一品乱讲我哦。사바 체미 봐 이게 또 내가 가르치는 뒤에 돌아 뒤에다 나와 사제베 사제 것은 생긴 답지 사제 것은 마음이 생긴 영화 이 섬대 나와 사제서 미들 루크걸미 나롱걸미 생크걸미 그래도 성민선 메도저 성모 뭐 대다고 맹배 탑을로 뒤에 주지디 사가리 지나는 삼제가 소리 참아지지 이게 소리로 그래 상대가 담지 되게 상대다 세상의 타도들아 뭐 이모 차도 없어 야고는 너는 삼바상도 사달라는 장송 데리들이 닦고 내가 가르치었나 이제 무슨 숨발에 세나세 탑에 돼 내가 가르치는 심지는 피부 다 코나 삼로다는 거랬지 ben 이제 무슨 홀드 거기 좀 삼아 버리는 동고서 홀드를 가르치고요. 오, 내 상징이 버려서 상징 지는 거예요. 오, 이 나는 정말 나 개들이랬어. 나 개들이 나 상징 진적을 했어. 나는 쭉 가래. 오, 상징 그 개들이는 인기고 되래요 그랬어. 나는 인기에 들어가면 오, 다음에 나는 홀드는 통화 인기하면 되고. 나가 개들 말해. 오, 인기 때다 너가 개들이 사지 기술이 뭐 취기술이 뭐 개인주 뒤집을 고쳐서 기술이만 탑 데이터를 대체해서 제 탑이 있어. 맞게 사면서도 직접 맞게는 사자 접고 공부해도 없어. 세르세 제 탑 데이터를 그래서 다 저기 강사 탐지는 비받아 내가 탑달 조단 향당 려양 대탑제를 또 나동도 가래 또 세미대 차송데 세미대 잘 가래 세미제 내록들을 통데 세미제 내록들을 같이 레벨들이 되어야지. 미시 속내들이 세미시야면 좋지. 세미나 과다고 해야만 그런 띠만 하면 중앙 안 가는 거 세미나 과래. 세미나 과를 뛰시면 세미야요 말이지. 그래서 내도 준비돼 만나봐 용무요. 용무들 때 잡으고 내가 그랬다 내가 이제 상태도 잡지. 너무 이제 다 이런 거 이런 게 뻥서 이미 적 다 대수 말이야. 때를 이제 취지디 사카리스나 도시를 남들로 된 이유 거래. 이제 하여 핀받쳐 보여야
For example, if you're holding a Drupchen, which is a great accomplishment retreat, some disciples say, and during those 7 days of the Drupchen, I had such a great experience. I was so happy. But then the moment the Drupchen is over, all of this joy is gone. So why is that? So it's because during the Drupchen, you are focusing your body, speech, and mind single-pointedly on the practice. With your body, you're visualizing the deity, and with your speech, you're chanting the mantra, and you're enchanted by the beautiful sound of the mantra, and your mind focuses single-pointedly. That is why you feel so happy during the retreat. Because normally, we just follow our habitual tendencies that arise in the mind. Whatever sounds we hear or sights we see, that triggers all kinds of feelings in our mind that constantly cause us a lot of pain, like being poked with like needles or thorns. So that is why we, in our ordinary lives, we constantly have all kinds of problems and we're not feeling happy. Whereas in the Drupchen, we are single-pointedly focused on the deity and the mantra melody with a single-minded mind. And when the mind is single-pointed, we come to the natural state of the mind. And so that is an experience that we must train ourselves in sustaining continuously. If that is sustained, then we will always experience great joy. And so that happens ultimately when we realize the ultimate nature of the mind. But then first we have to cultivate an understanding of the relative truth. And that is the relative bodhicitta. The relative bodhicitta is a mind of love. And so on the relative level, we still encounter difficulties. Sometimes we lose our love. We have love and then we lose it again. And when we lose it, we start fighting with others. So all of the virtuous activities of body and speech are connected to a mind of love. And then when we go into a drupchen, we are bringing the virtue of body, speech, and mind all into one. So it is a skillful means to purify the body, speech, and mind. So the mind visualizes the form of the deity, and the speech recites the mantra. The mind cultivates immeasurable love for all sentient beings. And so in this way, by combining body, speech, and mind, we purify the temporary habitual tendencies, which is like purifying polluted water. So ultimately, and then our true nature manifests. So that is called the actualized Buddha nature. Our mind attains freedom. When the mind attains freedom, it becomes like mercury that is dropped on the ground. So what does that mean? So normally, when water falls on the ground, then the water instantly is absorbed into the earth, and you can no longer separate the earth from the water. Whereas when mercury drops on the ground, it will stay self-contained as it is. It will not merge into the ground, so you can separate it from the ground. So this is how your practice becomes, in a way that you become unaffected by anything, and your awareness becomes stable. Your mindfulness becomes stable. In the end of the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says in verse number 36, in whatever you do, always look at the state of your mind. What is the state of my mind? What am I thinking? What am I saying? And when you are aware in this way, when you have mindfulness of all your thoughts in the mind, then the ordinary thinking will cease. And what remains then is a clear awareness. And that clear awareness that always sees what arises, that should be sustained in all your day-to-day activities continuously. And then through such mindfulness, we train then the mind in perceiving all appearances as the deity and all sounds as the mantra. And in this way, we remain unaffected by various appearances and sounds. So we say that all appearances are the deity. So one might say they are not the deity, but actually they are the deity. And that is because, not speaking about appearances as in other people, because everyone possesses Buddha nature. It is just temporarily, their mind is like an ice block. But just as their mind is like an ice block, so is your mind like an ice block at times. And we become afflicted. So that it is just a fault of affliction. So when there are disagreements, it is just a fault of afflictions. Ultimately, they are the deity because they possess Buddha nature. And also, what actually is the deity? The essence of the deity is actually bodhicitta. And that is the natural state of your mind, whether you have a religion or not. Even someone who doesn't have the Dharma or any religion, they still have the same nature of the mind. It is just that they haven't realized it. And through the Dharma, we have a way to realize the nature of the mind. But whether we are religious practitioners or not, we all have the same nature. There are some who have already practiced and trained in their previous lives, and when they read a line in a Dharma book, for example, they immediately understand. But it is said there is no higher learning than to realize the nature of your mind. Milarepa also said that do not seek the Buddha outside of yourself, but look at the characteristics of your own mind. Then you will find the Buddha naturally. Because the Buddha is like space. The Buddha is one with space and always present. So the Buddha is present, but it is just we cannot grasp the Buddha. He has no physical substance. He's in the mind. He is the natural state of the mind that is free of dualistic grasping. Whenever you realize the nature of the mind, you will find the Buddha. So that is, and then also related to the view of vipassana or special insight. When you find the Buddha within your mind, you have gained a special insight into the true nature of your mind, the clear nature that is free of all thoughts that grasp at a concrete existence or the true existence of appearances. There were some disciples who have actually said, my mind became like space, and that was such a joyful experience. And so in that moment, you really can gain an insight into the nature of the mind, when the mind becomes like space. And in an instant, naturally, you suddenly know that this is my true nature. And so the various practices are given in order to realize this nature. That is why on the outer level, we visualize our form as the deity. With our speech, we recite the mantra. And with our mind, we cultivate bodhicitta. Naturally, the various practices that we engage in, even on the outer level, will naturally then cause our six sense consciousnesses that we perceive, the perceptions of our sense doors, cause them to open up and become purified. So, for example, that is why we are setting up beautiful offerings in a temple, because the beautiful sights of an offering, for example, is what causes the eye consciousness to open up and to become purified. Or when we hear the beautiful sound of the mantra, then that purifies the ear consciousness and so forth. And the mind is purified through bodhicitta. So in the very beginning, when we first start out, we take refuge in the three jewels. The ultimate jewel is the Buddha jewel. But what has the Buddha taught? The Buddha taught that we need to train the mind in altruism, in immeasurable love. So this is the very foundation that we must lay on our path. And then we need to understand that all sentient beings possess the same Buddha nature. And within Buddha nature are the three kayas. It is just that they are immature. But the body, speech, and mind of the immature sentient beings can mature into the pure form of the Buddhas. The body matures into the Nirmana Kaya, the speech into the Sambhoga Kaya, and the mind into the Dharma Kaya, just like the seed of a flower ripening. So the secret mantra is a skillful method in this way. And then in whatever you do in the world or in the Dharma, do it with love. And if you do it with love, whatever you do becomes a practice of the Dharma, becomes a practice of virtue. Love is the antidote to anger and jealousy. It is also said if the motivation is positive, then also one's path will be positive. And Jigten Sumgön said, practice virtue, accumulate merit in whatever you do. So everything you do must become a skillful way of accumulating virtue. And so in whatever you do, think, may I be of benefit to sentient beings. For example, Jigten Sumgön also gave this method of using the begging bowl for drinking. He actually said that all my followers must drink from such a begging bowl. So what's the benefit of that? It is because the begging bowl is the Buddha's bowl. So if you drink from it, you remember the Buddha. And then you remember that I'm a Sangha because I'm a follower of the Buddha. And what did the Buddha say? the Buddha said that the Sangha needs to cultivate compassion. So do I have compassion? If you think that not really that much, then I'm not a Sangha. But if you think I do have some compassion, then you really are a Sangha. And so the begging bowl is a skillful method to recollect the three jewels simultaneously at the same time, which becomes another method to practice virtue in whatever you do. Then, of course, ultimately, if your mind always rests in a state of Mahamudra, then that is all that is necessary. But temporarily, we do need to rely on these skillful means of compassion, of wanting to benefit beings in whatever we do. And that is the purpose of all the various practices that we do, like the Deity yoga, and also yogic exercises, the chanting of mantra and beautiful melodies, and so forth. Through all these practices, these are skillful ways of causing our mind to settle into a state of peace and happiness. And when the mind is in such a calm state, it naturally arrives at its true nature. And that is because you experience bliss. So because you have arrived at your true nature, you experience great bliss. Now, so the experience of bliss is because your mind has calmed down through these skillful methods. And then again, coming back to this question, when someone has died, remember that the mind cannot actually die, because the mind is like space. We mentioned yesterday, the other day we talked about the 5 elements and said that the mind is the space element, and space cannot die. At the same time, there is karma that continues to work, and depending on what karma we have created, the result of either happiness or suffering will be experienced unmistakably. And that is why it is very important to be careful in our actions. That's why it is important to cultivate love and practice virtue in all of our activities, and to abandon harming others entirely and accomplishing the benefit of others entirely in whatever you do, whether you practice the Dharma or engage in a mundane activity. So this is this. We have mentioned there is one path, there's one basis and 2 paths. So this is the one path, that the beneficial path that you should take.
이 간다한테 이제 나지를 팽그 말이 차로근이 보는 ним하고 이제 슬라티고 이다고 슬라티 대마대 슬라티 등등 소고를 저 니빠든지 다다든 잡을랭 jak합탑질 동의요 잡을랭들 동의요나 이 동의 요소 동의 저지치는 랑게 저사 저 레마사보다 뭐지 참아지 저다 포기래 그 용어를 끼네 가고 드리면 잠을 달았더니들이 용어를 때 모남자야 그렇지 버려 모남자나 많이 밤에 있어고 때 말에 모남자는 다그 사바 똑되는 가라 사바세미 새끼 탐지 피고서 로떼고 그래 대래 대비지부터 뒤숨이 사지 탐색이 됐다 모남자가 그랬지 대비지부터 취재지 똑들 이제 토리 새끼 탐지 사지 네가 로르드마 등에 로르드 등에마다 돈나오게 사마 사지 등에 내가 간 거를 자로도 쇼고 얼마니 돈나오게 이 모남되잖아 취재 이제 똑들 대선지 똑쳐버리 별로 다사자 가시더니 만을 다듬으면 차를 다다다 사지에 막 강을 배 대사버리지 내가 로를 좀 하다 그래야지 들이치는 모남자야 그 제목을 생기다 되면 모남자야 그 제목을 선발이 롱샘니 롱달을 봐지 롱샘니지 그것도 사초선 뜻이 봐요 내 롱산세가 사회지 봐요 저다 가도 줄은 째서 장소들이 소중한 소원을 지가 금방 마행받아 하고 그래 로마서 좀 뒤발라면 잡았어 라고 진시다 저기 좀 예미봐 진시나 그래서 대결했더니 가지 지성을 대리용만 대 가지 지나 롱생이 냠도 요래지 롱서를 빠지면 빠지는 세군대로 대시에 그 요래 대라더니 쪼지 진시바요 소체버래지 대대체는 이거는 오왕 도지대 바텔라서 봤을 너는 셈싸고 바 요백감이 롱생이 냠도 요래지 바 매백감이 되니 유만 롱지들이 내롱이 짓을 쇼도래 바 요백감이 되니 바 되니 이식을 롱을 이식을 롱다 그래서 사토선 사바된 얘기나 내 이식을 롱도 저거래 돈담 내만 통는 때 이식을 롱을 대지들이 홍나고 보면 노랑통이랑이 탐지 홍나 보면 대검나 그래서 홍게 대파 양마 상가를 더 요래 되노래 좋았습니다.
So regarding the first question, how to transform these thoughts of sadness when a loved one has died. So whether someone has died or is still alive, you bring to mind their suffering with compassion. And then next you bring to mind the Yidam deity that you trust in the most. For example, Chenrezig and Tara. Think of them in an instant. Because if you think of the person that suffers in an ordinary way, then with such self-grasping, you can't really benefit them. They are like an ice block, and the ice block doesn't need another ice block, but it needs the sun to be melted. So therefore, remember the Yidam deity and chant the mantra. Then the second question says, now how can one have pure view of the cruelty and injustice in the world and see it as sacred also while acting to protect a country from attack? So there is a lot of suffering in the world, but it all arises from karma. It is important to understand that there is nothing that can happen if the karma has not been created. Everything arises from karma. And then various temporary conditions, also like medicine and so forth, lead to relief. And aspiration prayer is extremely important in such circumstances. Some people think that, I have no power to help anyone with my prayers. But that's also not true, because there are three powers. First, there is the power of your own intention. So first you need to have the intention of wanting to benefit sentient beings with immeasurable love. Then the second power is the power of all the Buddha's compassion. The Buddhas of the 3 times all make this one aspiration prayer of benefiting sentient beings. So you connect to the second power through your own power of love. And then that connects to the third power, which is the power of the Dharma Dhatu. And that is that the basis of mind is one and the same. We all are connected to a single basis, Buddhas and sentient beings alike. Sentient beings just appear as sentient beings temporarily due to the stains of afflictive emotions, and that is why they suffer. But this ice block has to be purified, has to be melted. So through these 3 powers, your aspiration prayer can become very effective, very powerful. For example, there have been some places in the world where there were times where even the sound of the Mani mantra, for example, was completely absent. It no longer exists. And then again, the Buddha's teachings flourished. So things are temporary. That's what we call this temporary stain. And in these moments, it's important to pray, to make aspiration prayers on the basis of these 3 powers. Then the third question says, how do you distinguish mind, which is Sem in Tibetan, mind from Rigpa? So on the relative level, we cultivate bodhicitta, the relative bodhicitta, and mindfulness. If you cultivate bodhicitta and mindfulness, then mind and Rigpa will become united. And so Rigpa actually basically is the natural state, the intrinsic mind, the intrinsic awareness. So the wind energies and intrinsic awareness become unified through bodhicitta and mindfulness. So again, in the 37 practices, this verse number 36, it says, in whatever you do, look at the state of your mind. So meaning that do not be distracted in whatever you do. Supplicate to Tara. In Tara, the Tara supplication, for example, one line says, Mother Goddess of Mindfulness, please protect me. So mindfulness, the Mother Goddess of Mindfulness is inseparable from your own mindfulness. Whenever you are mindful, she is there. And whenever you are unmindful, it seems that she is absent at this moment. The moment you are mindful, intrinsic awareness, so pure awareness, and wind energies are united. So the key point is mindfulness and awareness in all activities. For example, when you're going to bed in the evening before you fall asleep, you can practice the Om Ahung Vajra recitation as you fall asleep. And in this way, again, through such mindfulness, the winds and awareness are united. When you're unmindful, then the afflictive emotions are in control. Then you are controlled by the karmic winds. If you're mindful, then the wisdom winds are in control. On the relative level, love and compassion also are wisdom winds. And then when you see the ultimate truth, that is the ultimate wisdom wind. And you train in that, in mindfulness, for example, by remembering the hung syllable in all of your activities. When you remember the hung, when the hung is when everything surrounding you becomes hung, then mind and wind energies become united. And then also they become united, for example, through chanting the mantra, and the mind becomes single-pointed.
니네는 하장 가르쳐야지 롱도를 빠졌던지 제 라지 동이 있냐면도 봐 돈나고 내가 니 떼와 딱과 홍mom도 홍대 라지 오와 홍대데 홍대 양장데 쪼람도 요거 홍대 떼와 홍대 딱과 요래 또 지금께는 롱그 자사지 와래 롱 떼와는 얘네들이 니 참아 내가 참아 계속 요래 글쎄 약합대 자고는 난 샘세대 자고 그래 나와 탐지 홍 인삼지 홍 인삼지 홍을 이제 홍주고 공들이 떼어 홍대들이 르르야 피 되게 르빠지 이 홍는 내서나 이 영왕을 봐 생명왕을 봐 이 하장 그 전보리 이 상하가 탑대 물랑가들이 홍수막이 봐지 홍도 공들아 그래 전보리 비용 마음도 셔요 그런 다사시 나도 소리는 도이 예자보다는 얘기해서 뭐요 대화 홍콩도 하장 그 전보리 홍도 주야용을 rum이랑 이거 홍도 rum이 공지 이 전보리
And one very important point is that when we, as a method to combine the wind energies with awareness, and also as a method to accomplish the twofold purpose of others and oneself simultaneously, and as a method to realize the ultimate truth, we should visualize the hung syllable at our navel. And then practice the Om Ahung Vajra recitation in all your activities. But mainly focus on the syllable hung at your navel, inside of a fire flame. The navel chakra is significant because it is said to be the royal seat, the seat of all the other wind energies. It is the place from which the body grows. And all the strength of all activities, the force of all activities, comes from the navel chakra. So it is a very significant chakra to practice with. And then regarding this question of having the injustice in the world and so on, if we wish for peace and happiness in the world, we need to create peace and happiness in our own minds first. And that again links to the practice of the Hong. When you see everything as Hong, your Hong, others are Hong, there's just Hong, and that will actually also benefit your physical health. And it will benefit your mind. Your mind will calm down and become undistracted. So the practice of the Hong is extremely significant. And it's also a practice that is even practiced as a dream yoga practice throughout the night. So we can always practice the Hong. There's actually many things to be said about that, but we don't have so much time today. It's just important to remember the Hong syllable at all times at your navel chakra. And then also when you always visualize the Hong inside the fire flame in your navel chakra, that will also lead to the arising of warmth in your navel, which is good for your physical health as well. So always meditate on the Hong in the fire flame.
다시 가라 보기 타마 투지지 진네다 나로양당한테 삐디자 존나 침보리 내 심제리에 내가 탑리 대수소 장나들이 라돈디 이제도 가다 하자 피마 침보리 소소 뺐으면 좋고도 돼 투지지 타마 투지지 대연이 요랑 탐지를 대 탐지 다다 제가는 샘제시와 많이 뭐 샘된지도 그게 뭐 샘제시와데 홍나도 홍대로 사지의 샘기 니가 니가 사지의 샘기 니가 고대 니가 남의 저 광고를 갈고 다시 홍고 이렇게 대다 하고 그래 얘들이 사지는 주방한테 생기는 노동을 되게 좀 그 배워들 자식들이
Also, I would like to say thank you to the yoga teachers who have been here, and also for the Krishna Das for the beautiful singing of the mantra chant the other day. So that was really really wonderful. I thank you all very much, because all of these activities of yoga and the chanting of mantra has brought great benefit and great joy to everyone. And I would like to offer an auspicious katak as a sign of my appreciation for that, because these practices are extremely beneficial, and they are a method for the mind also to come to a single pointed state, and then in that way, again, that benefits others, and so it becomes an altruistic activity. We have seen people very, very happy when they joined these practices, and I myself felt very happy as well. So it is a sign, it is of great benefit. And so then in all of our activities, that is really what's most important, a single-pointed, undistracted mind. And when we practice the syllable Hong, we will come to a state of single-pointedness. The essence of all sentient beings and all the Buddhas is contained within the Hong. If you want to practice realizing all of samsara and nirvana at the same time, all in one, then just practice Hong, just meditate on the Hong syllable. That is enough. That also becomes an offering to all the Buddhas, and it becomes the benefit of all sentient beings. So I'm very grateful for the benefit that you all have created, and Tashi Telek.
요리상가 대주 담택기 지금 담택기 와서 사지 습지미 반대 삼지 됐다고 자 담택기 지고래 이제 내식이 뭐 사지 습지 되기는 내가 가까쳐 가지고 나중에 자성 삼지에 대 양대 천대고래 이 삼지 직보요라 양대 초래 사마침이 오는데 다 사지고 막 Raji Tony Rabate, don't they? Something the Hatan Karchimori, something the total Tojabala Kari, something is something related to Achimori, the Achimonangore.
And then lastly, the Samaya is also very important. And the Samaya of all Buddhas and sentient beings is the Samaya of love. That is what we need to hold on to. Even though our fundamental nature is Buddha nature, sentient beings temporarily have separated themselves through self-grasping. So to come back to our true nature, we need to cultivate love. So again, if you only cultivate immeasurable love, that in itself is also enough. That in itself accomplishes the purpose of others and oneself. Love is really most important between friends and so forth, and all the different kinds of love are most important. So love each other.
This Deb Chung Mango, Tangarica, Machekanga, Deb's round daily. The Chuju Sound again, don't change it last only. The Deb Chung is also carry, go on in them, Mugo than Yaman, that Deb Chung dinner is not to Karchisi, then Lana to something so come and check me the Tashin will check the people, Chamber, Sanjay, the Deb Chung about that. 남자 요래라는 가이가는 지속에 다수 요래 지속도 되게 대충 통제도 될때 보자 예좀 이렇게 뭐 대충 통제랑 다 최슈돼 돼. 그래서 되게 빈송 조강을 쳐도 직장이 오면이 잠깐 이게 통초고 말이. 내 가장 야고 찍을 강에 신나 반냠데 신나면 페바다 냠데 이렇게 뭐 인디sam볼 살아들 까바상고 사제 동장이 전범대 가정지 대만대 낭도 공토요래 대공대 다또 콜로나데 야요래 대지가 와서 뭐래 대 탱습니다 나 탱다고 자체도 철래디 가공이 투기사도 좋아와서디 들이 사제도 그거 다대 토요래 사제도 그거 좀 니바라더니 주디인지 양 니오벤 주칸게 양 까바상 부산에 독가상 너데까바상 주디가 또 오는 게 요래 다 니는 자기 메이전들이 가장 된게 어디는 뭐 공부들이 들이서나는 들이 다다 양들이 너데까바상 코로나 때 요지 자서 세그지바 대탐제지 지나봐 타봐 사제엠부터 알아야지 대답해야 될 자식들이 시원히 대 하자까바상 뭐래지
Also, we have these small booklets for you to take, and that actually has been my activity ever since I was released from prison. So these little booklets are extremely precious. It's extremely precious to print them, to distribute them, to read them, and so forth. So in the past, when I was just released from prison, there was nothing of the Dharma much left. We couldn't even recite a single mantra, and there were no scriptures left. So these little booklets became very precious and became really my main activity, to make them available, to print them and to distribute them. And also because they're very small, they are very convenient. You can just take them with you, and they are translated into Chinese, English, and Tibetan. And so that is another most precious thing that I advise you to practice. And so we have various prayers represented in our small books. You can take them if you want to take them, if you need them. If you don't need them, then also don't take them. So anyways, this was one of the most important activities that I have done since I came out from prison. And so again, one auspicious thing that happened at the same time that you had come here is that I received this scripture from Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo from the old days in Garchen. There's a sutra of the fortunate aeon written in golden letters, which is then to be placed into the prayer wheel. So that was very auspicious. So there were actually 3 times when we received special relics or objects and to fill the prayer wheel or the stupa with. And so one was when I returned from prison in 1980. There's a practice that we do in Garchen, the Goya Samaja of the Great Compassionate One. And then so there's this text or a form of an image of Goya Samaja that we had received, and the Buddhas of the Goya Samaja. And then the second one was a relic for the stupa that came from a New York library. And then that relic was then used to fill the stupa. And now the third one was this sutra written in golden letters from Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo, which will be placed in the prayer wheel. So that is something very auspicious that happened.
Long life.
On behalf of everyone, we want to thank Your Eminence Garchen Rinpoche for your profoundly inspiring, illuminating, and heart-opening teachings for the past 3 days. We thank you deeply and pray for your long life and request that you continue to turn the wheel of Dharma to guide us. Thank you so much. And so if everybody can wait in the temple after Rinpoche steps out, I have some announcements. Thank you.